My time's about up. You're getting ready to hear a really good speaker with Evan Kirksey. He's a young man. He said he's not used to this size venue, so please give him a real warm welcome. I've watched some of his speaking engagements. He's a real talented young man, and he's going to take the dis out of disability for you. So give a warm welcome to Evan Kirksey.
When I think back to my time in high school, a full 6 months ago, I think of me trying way too hard to impress everybody. And despite all the craziness the high school brings, some of my fondest memories were of the classes and teachers that truly helped me thrive and be creative, creating things just like this speech. I'm talking about English class. So today, I want to take a stroll back down memory lane as we look at everyone's favorite or most dreaded part of high school, English class. Now, last year I was sitting in senior composition, and we were asked the question, do you believe that you can do anything? The mixed responses truly surprised me. There was a varying array of course, follow your dreams, and it's physically impossible to do certain things. But my response was clear. I've always believed that I can achieve anything I set my mind to, anything at all. Like the time I told myself I'd be a good driver and took out a mailbox on my first time. And my grandpa's car. Or maybe the time I told myself I will eventually be good at sports. The closest I ever got was scoring a 46 at bowling. Or maybe the time I told myself, I'm eventually going to be good at math. 19 years later, and I'm still waiting. The point is, I've always tried. And yeah, sometimes I've failed, but that doesn't mean I'm incapable. Incapable. That word resonates with me like no other. I've always been told I'm incapable simply because I'm different. I have a disability. The medical term is cerebral palsy. No matter where I go, no matter what I do, this term is forever connected to me. It's a movement disorder. It usually causes issues with hearing, vision, sensation, swallowing, and speaking. Luckily, that's not the case for me. I was fortunate enough to get only a very mild dose of this disability. My family has reiterated one thing to me since I was young. I'm not different. My disability doesn't define me. I can write my own story. A disability doesn't define someone. So since we're throwing it back to English class, today we'll write our own story. So first we'll delve into the main exposition as we look at just what it means to have a disability, as well as some common misconceptions. Then we'll dig deeper into the conflict as we look at some of the biggest issues plaguing the disabled today. And finally, we'll tie up the end as we reach the ultimate resolution. So let's begin by delving into the main exposition. It's a common misconception that the disabled need special treatment, when in reality they're hardly different from anyone else. For example, my CP only affects the left side of my body. My left arm will always be a bit weaker than my right arm, and my right leg will always be just a bit stronger than my left. But my mind, appearance, and overall ability remain unaffected. Yet, it seems many people simply don't understand this. In a study conducted by Scope, a British organization dedicated to giving the disabled the same opportunities as others, in May 2014, they found that 67% of the overall British public feel uncomfortable when talking to someone who's disabled. And a whopping 85% believe that the disabled face prejudice on a daily basis. This isn't just an issue in the UK. In September 2015, there was a study conducted called the Disability Employment Puzzle, in which case over 6,000 applicants were put into different accounting positions throughout the United States. Now, 1/3 of these had a spinal cord injury, 1/3 of these had Asperger's syndrome, and 1/3 had no disability at all. Now, these specific disabilities were chosen because they would not limit productivity in the field of accounting. Yet, even then, the people with disabilities were 26% less likely to be chosen for employment than those who weren't disabled, even when they had better qualifications. There's clearly an issue with this, because in no way does a disability define someone's true capabilities. Let's look at a few examples. Stephen Hawking, one of the world's most renowned physicists, was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, shortly after his 21st birthday. Today, he's confined to a wheelchair and a computerized vocal system, but this has never stopped him from writing his own story. Today, he has 16 scientific awards and has made some of the greatest discoveries known to man. Another great example would be President Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR was paralyzed from the waist down and thus confined to a wheelchair. Despite this, he successfully guided our nation through World War II. He's admired for ending the Great Depression, and he's the longest-serving president in the history of the United States. He's recognized as one of the greats. Yet, during his administration, he and his staff went to great lengths to prevent the media and the public from seeing him in a wheelchair, believing that his disability would undermine his leadership and signify weakness. He proved that paralysis didn't stand as a roadblock to becoming a great leader, yet his concerns were prominent for a reason. So now let's dig deeper into the conflict as we look at some of the biggest issues plaguing the disabled today. We live in a society that's entirely too focused on what's quote-unquote normal. So much so that it can be difficult to find your voice, find where you belong, or where you truly fit in. This is exactly the predicament facing millions of people with disabilities on a daily basis. Now, marketing expert Brandon Gale conducted an extensive study into disability discrimination. He found that 1 in 4 people with disabilities will face an incident of discrimination each and every day. 2/3 of the general public polled admitted to going out of their way to avoid someone with a disability simply so they wouldn't have to interact with them. 38% of the overall American public believe that the disabled are a burden on society, and over 100 hate crimes are committed daily against the disabled. According to the Disability Justice Network, the disabled are 4 to 10 times more likely to be abused than their non-disabled peers. They tend to be abused more frequently and for longer periods of time. When one truly examines the interactions between the human race, there's a clear divide between the disabled and the non-disabled. We must work together to bridge this gap, otherwise the consequences could truly be detrimental. Kevin Michael Connolly, a 30-year-old thrill seeker, was born without legs. He's always strived to make an impact, but he's been the subject of what he calls the stare his entire life. Throughout his life, he's traveled to 17 different countries and taken over 32,728 photographs of different people literally staring at him. He's made it clear that he wishes he could leave his own home without being looked at as different. DeAndre Bloomfield, a 13-year-old boy with a walking condition, just wanted to be normal. His condition caused him to walk with a limp, and thus the neighborhood kids called him Limpy. His mom was so excited when one of the neighbor boys asked him over because she thought maybe he was finally making a true friend. Little did she know that would end up being one of the worst days of their lives. To quote her, she said, "This kid was just vicious. He torched him. He torched his hands, his face, his neck, and his back. DeAndre was harassed and severely burned simply because of his disability. Ryan Halligan, described as a sweet, fragile, innocent, fun-loving, and extremely intelligent boy, began being bullied in 5th grade due to having a learning disability and being in special needs classes. His caring parents had always taught him that his disability didn't define him, but the torment was constant. He was harassed online and in person to the point of needing to see a therapist simply because he was different. He was constantly ostracized and told to kill himself by his peers for something he couldn't even control. He was stuck in his own never-ending nightmare, or so it seemed. On October 7th, 2003, at the innocent young age of 13, Ryan Patrick Halligan took his own life. All of it could have been prevented if someone had stepped in. Expanding upon this, in a study conducted by the Disabled World, they found that the suicide rates correlating to the disabled are significantly higher than that of the rest of the general population. These examples raise two of the biggest concerns plaguing our society today: the mistreatment of the disabled and the apathy of the human race. Apathy is defined as inaction when action is called for. And cases like the Ryan Halligan case happen constantly, witnessed by many, but stopped by few. If something doesn't change, it could truly be the difference between life and death for some. But now let's tie up the end as we reach the ultimate resolution. Acceptance. True acceptance is key. Everyone deserves to live their own full, happy life without regard to race, gender, sexuality, national origin, religion, or disability. When we think of the big issues within our society today, everyone talks about racism, sexism, and homophobia, but they often don't realize just how much discrimination also affects the disabled. Now, changing society's standards on disability discrimination won't be easy, but if just a few people can step up at a time, lives could be changed and even saved in the process. So how does one spark this change? Well, for the answer, let's throw it back to English class, crack open our dictionaries, and take a look at the word disability. The prefix dis implies the opposite of being able. But if you take away the prefix, that simply leaves ability. That's exactly what we must strive to do in today's society. We must abolish the stigma that surrounds having a disability because it's not self-defining. It doesn't limit someone's potential. It's not something to pity, and it in no way makes their life not worth living. We must get rid of these negative connotations, otherwise it could truly be too late for some. It's often said that the worst part about having a disability is that people meet it before they meet you. I can attest to this. There was a time when I had no idea I was different. It wasn't until I started receiving the looks and the demeaning comments of others that I realized I wasn't the same. When I was young, I was called a turtle because I couldn't run as fast as everyone else in PE. When I was in 6th grade, I was called weird because I got taken out of class each day for physical therapy. In 7th grade, I was called mental because of the way I talked. In 8th grade, I was called a cripple because of the way I walked. And my freshman year of high school, I was told I would never understand my surroundings. To this day, I'm still proving I'm capable. Now, I may not be the best driver. I may not be great at sports, and I may not know how to do math. But the doctors told my parents I would never walk, I would never talk, and I would never function properly. And thankfully today, I've proven them wrong entirely. Throughout my high school career, I was actively involved in speech and debate, taking speeches just like this to the local, state, and national level, trying to promote true change. Today, I'm a freshman at Southwest Baptist University on a full-ride scholarship from the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. I still take every opportunity I can to spread this message, my message, that I believe is so important. I've done my best to take the dis out of my disability, and I've done my best to write my own story, because I believe everyone deserves their own equal shot to write their next chapter. In the words of Stephen Hawking, we're all different. There's no such thing as a standard run-of-the-mill human being, but we all share the same human spirit. So if we all share the same human spirit, are any of us truly different at all? We must strive to take the dis out of disability once and for all. Thank you.